Butler out, Robinson out, Kriisa out. Who is Kentucky going to turn to in the big road contest against the Texas Longhorns?
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Texas Longhorns, a game where Kentucky's going to be down a few players, and they're going to have to solve a major issue at point guard. How are they going to do it? We're going to break it down on the show, as well as take a look at the Longhorns, what they do well, what they struggle with, kind of where we see the keys to the game really matching up in this one. It's going to be a crucial, and I mean crucial, game for the Cats here today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $150 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Thank you guys so much for whoever has tuned in as this season has continued to roll along. Thank you for leaving comments. Thank you for giving me questions, suggestions, encouragement. And this has been incredible. It's been a really fun season so far. And we're at a pivotal point right now because Kentucky is going on the road and playing a good team that has, I think, been limited by the conference that they're in this season. Texas, I think, in any other major Power 6 league would be playing for a really solid NCAA tournament spot, I think, later on this year. But unfortunately, because of just how difficult the SEC is this season, they've taken some lumps recently. And quite honestly, when you look at their resume, this team is nowhere near as bad as their record is. And their record, for the record, is actually not bad at all. So I want to start today's episode instead of taking a look at Texas first, and we did this last episode as well. I want to take a look at what Kentucky's going to do at point guard, because I think that's the most important question heading into this game. And once you answer that, I think you start to figure out kind of what the game plan could possibly be here. Like I mentioned, according to the injury report, which came out late on Friday evening, Lamont Butler is out. Kerr Kriisa obviously has been out. He is going to stay out. And then Jaxson Robinson as well out. So you have your best on-ball defender and your lead guard out. You've got your best scorer in conference play out and best shooter in conference play out. And then you've got your backup point guard out. So your top three options at PG are not playing for certain in this game. And on top of that, Mark Pope, in his comments recently about kind of what the issue is with both Butler and Robinson, he's kind of said some really concerning things about he wants to get these kids healthy before March. Are we going to get them back before March? And if Kentucky doesn't get them back before March, where does that put them over these final several games? Are they able to continue to win? Are they able to do enough to maintain a 4 seed or higher heading into the SEC tournament, or at least projections-wise? Are they able to get higher than a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament? Because I think that's going to be big for Kentucky's first matchup. First and foremost, before we answer who Kentucky's going to get back at guard, I want to point out here, winning this game today is asking a lot of this team because of the situation that the Cats are in. Again, your starting power forward is not 100%, and you're down your top three options at guard. You're down your best shooter in conference play. You are losing a lot here. The crazy thing about this is that Kentucky was able to find a way to beat a top 5 team at home that had the best defense in the nation. They were able to close out that game on a massive run using bench players, and they were able to stay in that game almost exclusively because of how well Trent Noah and Travis Perry combined together to play on the floor. Winning this one, though, on the road is asking a lot. This would be Kentucky's first 3-game winning streak, I think, since they beat the Zags. I think it was like Colgate, the Zags, and then Louisville in December. It would be asking them to get another quad 1 win on the road, which, again, Texas is 15-10, but still, it's a very good team. You're asking a lot in terms of effort and discipline, And you're asking guys who have not been able to produce this season, or excuse me, not been able to, they just have not produced this season. You're asking them to step up and suddenly be good scorers, be really good defenders, be knowledgeable, be comfortable in the game. And I think that the environment that Texas is going to create here is going to give Kentucky a very difficult challenge. According to KenPom, I think Kentucky is now favored by 1 point. It's a 53% chance of winning. It is a literal coin flip here as to whether or not the Cats are able to take this one. I could see Kentucky winning this game by a close margin. I could see them losing it by 15. It's all about the effort and the production that you get from your bench. But again, it starts here at points. You have your usual suspects, at least the ones that you got to see in that closeout against Tennessee. I think Travis Perry will play the large majority of the minutes, a lion's share of the minutes at point. And if he's not playing point, you're going to have Dawe technically at the 1 with a Williams running most of the offense there, as he has done for so much of this season. But Travis, I think, is your first option here. If he is able to shoot as well as he did against Tennessee, if he's able to provide you 8 points, maybe an assist or 2, not be a traffic cone on defense, which he has unfortunately been so far this year. If he's able to provide you even average value, you've won. Not the game, just here with your rotation. I think the second best option for you at point is Koby Brea. I think Kobe's going to get a lot of run in this game, and I'm going to talk about that later on in the show because of injuries. And he's going to have to step up in a lot of different ways. I think he's your second option here. Your third option, I think, is, of course, Amari. You just have a bunch of your shooters run off ball, and you have Amari at the top running stuff. We're going to get to some of Texas's concerns here later on in the show. I don't know if that's a good thing for Kentucky to have to have a big beyond the 3-point line, because I think there are ways they could benefit from having Amari down low. But again, we'll get to that later in the show. So Perry, I think, is going to have to step up in this game. He has to make plays. Brea is going to be asked to do more than shoot the ball. And Amari, I think, is going to have to play, in essence, a perfect game. We'll get to that in keys to the game. The final thing I want to point out here, either Travis Perry or Trent Noah, Kentucky products, are going to have to start in this game. Unless Kentucky really wants to do Almanor at the 3, Carr at the 4, and that's their starting 5, which they've not done. I don't think they're going to do that here. Perry or Noah is going to start. I assume it's Perry, despite how well Trent has played. I would prefer it to be Noah and Ortega start at the 1. You go Dawe, Noah, Brea, Almanor, Williams. Man, that's a tough shooting lineup right there. That is a hard guard. But yeah, Kentucky is incredibly shorthanded, down 3 of their better players, two of their 3 best players, and they're going on the road to face a quad 1 opponent in Texas. What do we know about the Longhorns? What have they been doing recently? How does Kentucky match up with them? I think there are some things that we can both take positively and negatively from what the Longhorns are, which will lead us further down the rabbit hole. This is kind of like a 50-50 matchup. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Factor. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Well, Factor makes eating easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every single week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. It is so impressive just how many options that Factor will give you within a month. Like I mentioned, 40 options within a week. I personally tried the Louisiana shrimp after I got my order recently. Oh my gosh, it was incredible. I prefer the Protein Plus stuff just to be able to get as much protein as possible in every meal, and Factor has that for you, absolutely. They've got so many different ways that you can kind of fit your lifestyle, again, kind of fit the diet that you want. And it is all incredible food, again, in just 2 minutes. Really, really awesome stuff. The convenience is just unbeatable. There's no prep. There's no mess. It's great food. in just a matter of minutes. You can eat smart with Factor and get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off and use code lockedoncollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's a big deal. Again, code lockedoncollege50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off to get 50 off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, continuing along here on what is now the Saturday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. Again, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would really appreciate it if you did so. We are previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Texas Longhorns, who are 15-10 and have lost their last 3 straight games. They were 4-5 in SEC play, 15-7 on February 1st after they got a big blowout win over LSU, and they've dropped 3 straight games to Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Bama, 2 of those at home, by the way. So what does Texas do well? We'll start with the positives. I want to give this team praise. This team is good despite their 15-10 record, 4-8 in league play. They're really good outside shooting. If I'm not mistaken, this was the best three-point shooting team, according to KenPom, coming out of non-conference play, or at least they were deep into non-con play. They've dropped to 55th nationally, shooting 36.6%. Do not let the statistics fool you. Shooting, by the way, just 31.4% in conference play. Do not let the statistics fool you. There are several players across this roster that can absolutely light it up at any given moment. Personnel-wise, this is a tough guard because they've not been shooting well from 3, so it's created more opportunities to drive, or rather it's forced them to create more opportunities to drive and get to the foul line. And if you look statistically, they're doing a great job of getting to the foul line in league play, and they are shooting 78% from the charity stripe. 78%. This is a great free throw shooting team. That's a mark, by the way, shooting so well at the line. That's a mark of a really good shooting team, period. Kind of reiterates my point here. So this offensively, I think Texas is better than what their analytics say they are, just personnel-wise. And they've got guys that can drive and create without needing to get open. Like you don't have to pass them open. You don't have to make a player open. I think a lot of what Mark Pope and Kentucky have done so well is that they create offense through the system, through the X's and O's. They will get players open. They will create open looks for shooters. These guys can handle the ball, and they're very experienced. If you want to look at the X factor, I think it's pretty clear who it is. It is Trey Johnson, the star freshman. Incredible player. 33 minutes a game, 19.3 points, 3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, a steal, shooting only 43.9% from the floor, which is like kind of average, not great, but 38.6% from 3. This kid can pull from anywhere. And the big thing about him is that he is a great creator. I was mentioning a second ago, you've got so many different guys up and down this roster that can create in isolation, go get a bucket themselves. This is the perfect example of that, and he is such a good shooter. It's a really tough matchup. It's a tough matchup for anybody. It's especially tough for Kentucky, who is down so many players, 2 of their better defenders. He's got a great, I put this in my notes after watching some stuff on him, great touch and feel for the game with speed. When he has been sped up, he is still comfortable, he's still calm, he's still hitting tough shots. Can't say that necessarily for the rest of the team in SEC play, but we'll get to that in a second. Trey Johnson is your X factor here. Phenomenal scorer, going to be a tough guard for whoever Kentucky puts on him. Real quick, by the way, Kentucky's X factor is Koby Brea. We'll get to him more in depth later on in the show when we get to keys to the game. So really good outside shooting. They can get to the foul line, and they've got players that can drive and create without needing to be thrown open, made open. What do they struggle with? Why have they lost 3 straight games? Why are they 4-8 in league play? I want to reiterate here before I get to the negatives. In another league this season, Texas would be doing super well. They would probably still only have 6 or 7 losses, if that. They would absolutely be in the running for a higher seed in the NCAA tournament. I think they're projected to just miss the field, or they're on the bubble. Let's check bracket matrix real quick, just so that I in real time cannot cold take myself. We're going down. We're looking. Is Texas not on here? Okay. Texas is not even on. Maybe I'm just playing wrong. Whoops. Maybe they've just dropped out over these last couple of weeks, and I've just not checked close enough. So anyway, I think they're still. I would have them as an NCAA tournament team in another league. Unfortunately, they've just taken so many losses, and that's not a shot at them. They've taken so many losses here that are just tough that the resume, I guess, is just not as strong as it needs to be. But what do they struggle with? The defense has been the big thing for them. And it's kind of shocking. So on KenPom, it will allow you to go look at the offensive and defensive efficiency and then major statistics for both of those things all the way down on the little team page that they have for each team, right? So you're going to see for both offense and defense, you're going to see effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, rebounds, free throw rate, 3-point shooting, 2-point shooting, free throws, blocks, steals, non-steal turnovers. If you want to, you can look at the page and just see their statistics for the season, but you can also click a little tab at the top that sets it to conference-only stats. In every single defensive statistical category, Texas is 11th or worse in the SEC. Outside of non-steal turnovers, which they are 7th. I don't care about that stat. Kentucky's not incredibly turnover prone. They're not throwing the ball out of bounds a ton. Hopefully it doesn't happen in this game, knock on wood. But they are, again, 11th or worse. They are really 12th or worse in almost all of these categories. Yeah, all but 2, they're 12th or worse. They do not create turnovers. They do not rebound. They do not prevent opponents from getting to the foul line. Opponents shoot a good percentage from them, both from 3 and from 2. 36 from 3, 51.2% from 2. They do not block shots. They do not create steals. They don't do any. They have not done anything well in SEC play defensively. And that shows in their 3 most recent games, all of which they lost. Against Arkansas, they lost 78-70. And Arkansas got to the free throw line, and they specifically got out in transition and were just daring Texas to foul them on the way up to the rim. Guys like Thiero, guys like Janelle Davis, obviously that's what Arkansas wants to do. They are lengthy, they are aggressive, they're going to push when they need to and draw fouls. We can sit here and complain all we want about the fact that Adu Thiero, kind of like most of his offense is drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line, but you have to respect it. He's a 6'8", 230-pound kid that can handle the rock. If you can't stay in front of him, that's your issue, right? Kentucky doesn't have anybody like that. So you go to the next game. They don't have anybody like that can like bully ball you. You could say away, but again, he's been shooting such a poor percentage inside the arc recently that I find it hard to rely on him as somebody important over maybe somebody like Brea as like your X factor here in this game. I considered it. Then you've got a team like Vanderbilt. They got to the line, but they didn't shoot like a great percentage from 3 or from 2. They actually shot a pretty poor percentage from 2, at least relative to Texas's defensive averages. But what Vanderbilt did do was grab 17 second chance opportunities. They grabbed 17 offensive rebounds, which is just bad for the Longhorns. And then you see that game against Alabama. And, you know, Alabama, they shot 23 free throws. They grabbed 11 offensive rebounds. But the big thing they did was go 17 of 29 from 3. Goodness gracious alive. They were shooting the lights out in that first half if you want to go back and watch that game. So they've lost 3 different games where they've just crumbled defensively. They've given up second chance points. They've given up free throws. They've given up threes. They cannot find a way to stay consistent. They're not creating turnovers as well. And the big thing that I continue to go back to, if you want to look at their losses, kind of like watch how they've lost this year, they seem to struggle with pace. When they do not have shots fall, defensive rebounding for the opponent leads to getting out in transition and Texas getting stressed. Even in the half court, they do not seem to do well with team speed, collective passing, which I think benefits Kentucky in this matchup. Here's a fun stat for you. KenPom tracks the pace of every game, and it'll like get just like a basic number, right? In games with a pace of 70 or higher, which I think is like 70 possessions for each team. I may be wrong on that. In games with a pace of 70 or higher, this season, Texas is 6-6 in those games. But against SEC opponents, when they play games with a pace of 70 or higher, they're 1-5. And in case you want to know, I'll go pull this up here real quick for you guys. Kentucky has played how many games over 70? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 of their games have had a pace of 70 or higher. Does not spell good things for Texas. Before we get to the keys, seems to be a lot of negative here. I want to give credit where credit is due. Trey Johnson is a great scorer. Tremont Mark is a very experienced guard. Jordan Pope is a very experienced guard. They've got two really good guards that shoot a decent percentage from three. An above average to average percentage from three. They can hurt you. Either of them absolutely can hurt you. Arthur Kaluma, who is the second leading scorer on this team, was listed as doubtful on the SEC injury report, which is really big, I think, in this game. I know Kentucky's injuries are being kind of like the thing that everybody's focusing on. You cannot overlook that. Kaluma is their leading rebounder, as well as, again, their second leading scorer at almost 13 a game, while shooting almost 40% from three. He's the K-State transfer. I think he played at Creighton as well. We've talked about him on the show before. We wanted him at Kentucky, and Kentucky didn't get him a couple years ago. They've got a really good roster, minus Kaluma, who I don't think is going to play in this game. He might. We'll see. And that's shown in their overall results. They have lost a lot of close games this year. They lost by 5 at home to Auburn. They lost by 4 at home to Tennessee. They lost by 3 on the road to Ole Miss. They lost by 8 at home to Arkansas. They lost by 7 on the road to Vanderbilt. That game was way closer until they just could not hit a shot at the end of the game. Been extremely competitive up and down the season. They won by 1 point against A&M. They won by 4 on the road against Oklahoma. They've been in so many different tight contests. They've lost a lot of close ones. You may ask the question, they're on a 3-game skid. Kentucky just beat a top 5 team, and now they're down 3 players. Is Texas due? We'll get to the keys to the game here in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action, it's just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off, or you want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using the live betting feature. This app has super easy tools to use. It keeps me engaged in the moment with the game. It's whether I'm backing my team, which I'm currently looking for a new one. I'm leading Knicks, by the way, which is really helping me with FanDuel because I'm having some fun with the Jalen Brunson lines. I'll say it. Picking a player to hit a clutch 3, backing a late game rally, picking some stuff on some rebounds, which I think is always fun where boards are involved. I never feel like I've missed my chance here with FanDuel. App, again, is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, wrapping up the now Saturday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. So let's get to the keys to the game here pretty quickly. So we've talked about Texas, what they do well, what they struggle. You know the roster at this point, or at least the major players. I do want to note, we always like to talk about this. With Kaluma out, Jason Kent is probably going to get the start. By the way, Devin Pryor, who has been a role player for them, was listed as probably play small forward at 6'7", $185. But Jason Kent, 6'8", 215, played really well against Alabama. I think he dropped like 19. He was the second leading scorer in that game. Was like 2 of 4 from 3. On the season, he's only shooting 28.6% from beyond the arc, which leads me to point out here briefly, if Kentucky's going to play percentages and leave forwards open, you can't do that. You can't do that against this kid. He's proven that he can be big in big games. All right, let's get to keys. First key, Koby Brea giving you the defensive effort he's given over the last 2 games. If you want to go look at Kentucky's last 2 victories, one of the biggest things that I've kind of been taken away from me, if you're not looking at stats or the major performers, is that Brea is giving it everything he's got. Energy-wise, fighting through screens, hedging, being more handsy, creating steals, right? You have to keep that going, especially considering he's going to be asked to be, I think, a primary ball handler more often in this game, which gets me to my second key here. Brea has to be more than a shooter. He's got to play defense, like I mentioned. He's got to be a good passer. He cannot be turnover prone, and he's got to be a good ball handler. He has to initiate stuff. He has to be able to drive in this game. And if he's going to take those little floaters, he hasn't hit a ton recently. He hit a ton at the beginning of the year. He did a ton at Dayton last season, which is why his 2-point percentage was so high. He's got to be able to execute here. Third key, you have to overall, I mentioned Brea specifically, but overall you have to keep the defensive intensity, especially on Trey. I don't think Kentucky has a great answer for Trey Johnson. I don't know if it's Colin Chandler off the bench. I don't know if it's Brea. I don't know if it's Dawe. I don't know what they're going to do. Frankly, nobody's had an answer for him consistently this year because he's averaging 19 a game as a freshman. But you have to overall keep the defensive intensity. Something that Arkansas did really well is they got into passing lanes and then they got out into transition when they created turnovers. I'm not asking you to jump passing lanes and then allow an easy bucket inside every possession down the floor, but I'm asking you to be more handsy, hedge stuff, be more aggressive. Make Texas, which gets to my fourth key here, make the players into passers, not drivers. Make them give up the ball instead of driving on you, getting to the rim, or drawing a foul. You have to be aggressive, be handsy, and make them give the ball up. Make this offense work a little bit. Kentucky hasn't done that a ton this season. They've done it really well over their past 2 games. So it's asking for a third game in a row. Can you keep that up? Again, as I said at the top of the show, this is a very tough ask for this roster right now to win a game like this. I think the next game for Kentucky is at home against Vandy. I think you should win that game. Yeah, I think you should win that game. You're projected to win it by 10. But a game like this is tough. You're asking for a lot of perfect ball at different points. Fifth key, bench production has to step up again. I don't know if Carr's going to start or not, but I'll say Carr, whoever comes off the bench between Noah and Perry, who's not a starter, whoever's not playing a ton, Perry has to be efficient. Perry has to be efficient, dude. And then Colin Chandler has to be worth something outside of his defense. If he can come in and hit a corner 3, which he's not hit essentially all season, that would be big. Just give me 3 points. Make a shot. Go 1 of 2. Make a big corner 3 and play with your pants on fire against not Kaluma, Trey Johnson, or whoever you're matched up against, Tremont Mark, whoever it may be. Sixth key, Amari Williams has to have a near perfect game, a good third game in a row. He's balling, dude. Plus minus efficiency, passing, blocks. He's having a great 2-game stretch. You have to make it 3. Individually, I think he's either your second or your third best player on this team, depending on the night. Probably your second. Sometimes your first because of his ability to pass. You know what? You could put him at first or second. I would say comfortably second, consistently floating between those 3 spots. But he's your best player on the floor against Texas. Because of injuries, he is your best player. He's got to have a great game. He's got to show up and be aggressive on defense. Block shots. Dunk the ball. Be aggressive, physical in the paint without fouling. Final key here. You have to do enough offensively to apply pressure to Texas. We talked about pace earlier. We talked about teams getting out in transition. We talked about the speed in the half court, about how Texas struggles with that. You have to do enough offensively to apply pressure. You can't rush things. You can't just be fogging up shots and frigging out like Kentucky has been prone to do, like several teams have been prone to do this season, like good teams. But you have to do enough. You have to hit shots when they matter and apply pressure on defense and lay it on them thick, dude. Try and get to the line. Try and build a kill shot in this game. If you can build a kill shot in this game, you can get it by 7 or 8 points. Apply some pressure, okay? Keep the momentum going without a timeout, without a stoppage in play. See if you can do enough in a 3 or 4 minute stretch where you can really lay a hurting on Texas and put them in a tough spot offensively, where they have to go and, okay, we're down by this much. Kentucky is consistent on offense. They're not shooting like 50% from three or anything like that, but they're doing enough to cause problems here. We have to step up. We have to play with a little bit more intensity, with a little bit more pace. And I think that will play into Kentucky's hands if Texas isn't shooting the lights out of it. Amari grabbing boards, Garrison grabbing boards. You have to do enough offensively. I'm not asking you to have a crazy world-beating game. I'm asking you to just be enough, which I think, frankly, is, again, I don't want to give a score prediction for this game. I think if you score 85 in this game, you should win. If you score 80, you're on the threshold there. So I'm not going to give a score prediction. I want to ask you guys, who do you think is going to win in the comments below? I think this is a very tough game for Kentucky to win. Full strength, I'd feel pretty good about it right now because of the roster. It's just such a hard ask, and I need us to understand that heading into it. And if they win, oh my gosh, is it huge. It's huge for their resume. There's not a ton of wins or games on the schedule left against opponents that are sub 500 in SEC play. You got to make games like this. You got to go out there and fight. All due respect to Texas, who is a good team. They're a good team. You got to go out there and fight in this one, man. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_ and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. You can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.